part, because if I get that, I get in trouble. Right. Okay. So this morning we're going to chat. We've just finished. Last week we did I kind of did a resume on cardiovascular risk factors. We're now moving on this morning to chat a little bit about body fat distribution and measurement. This is very important in terms of your metabolic health. It's not just about what your overall weight is. And you'll know that. And the reason why you know that is because since you started TSD, presumably if they're doing the same thing they did when I started 4 years ago, you will not just be weighing yourselves, but you'll be taking lots of body measurements. You'll be doing your hips, your waist, and your thighs. Okay. So it's not just a problem with having an unhealthy weight. It's essentially where the extra weight or the fat is stored. And that will have different effects on your health. Okay, so fat is stored in 2 different places in the body. And fat is stored in a tissue called adipose tissue. So that's just the fancy term for where we store fat. And there are 2 main types of adipose tissue. One is called subcutaneous and one is called visceral. Does anybody know where the subcutaneous fat is found?
Under the skin.
Yeah, just under the skin. Okay. So, and that's not usually a very big layer on humans anyway. And most people are aware of that, but the one that people aren't or know less about is kind of the visceral fat. So visceral fat, viscera, is just a fancy term for an organ. It's a general term for an organ. So your kidneys are a viscera. Your lungs are a viscera. Your heart's a viscera. But visceral fat basically means that the fat lies around your organs. And the most common one and the one we think of in terms of metabolic health is your liver. Okay, your liver is a huge organ, and we'll do a separate topic on the liver and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But your liver is a huge organ that runs essentially from your right nipple right across to your left, big wedge-shaped organ. Okay, and when you lay fat down, and especially in your abdomen around your trunk, a lot of that, little bit of it will be under your skin, subcutaneous, but a lot of that will be visceral. It will be around your organ. Okay, so anybody have any idea why the fat around your tummy, your abdomen, is not good from a metabolic or a health point of view?
It affects your blood pressure. It makes your organs work harder, makes your heart have to pump more.
Yeah, so generally the bigger you are, your heart has to pump more because any tissue, whether it be fat tissue or muscle tissue, has more, needs to be kept healthy. So it needs lots of blood vessels. That makes your heart work harder. The big thing with having fat around your abdomen is it increases your insulin resistance. Okay, and don't worry, I will do a whole topic on insulin resistance and type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Okay, so essentially, when you lay down fat, and particularly abdominal fat, that increases your insulin resistance, or another way to look at that is it decreases your insulin sensitivity. So that means the insulin, which is the hormone that you require to get glucose into your cells, which is produced by your pancreas, doesn't work as well. And we'll do a session on this, but the way I like to think of this is if you can think of a room that's got 2 doors in it, and it's really good because my clinic room currently has 2 doors in it, so it's really useful for my patients. You've got 2 doors in it. One of the doors will swing open in response to insulin to allow patients to come in or to allow glucose to come into the cell. And we'll chat about the other door in another session, okay? But there are 2 doors that gets glucose into your cells, okay? So the problem is when you have increased visceral fat, particularly around your abdomen, you become more insulin resistant. When you become more insulin resistant, that can make you either pre-diabetic or indeed a type 2 diabetic. So you may have diabetes. It also, the fat around your liver, also affects your fat levels in your blood. Can anybody tell me the 2 main fat levels in your blood that we measure in the lab that you'll get if you go to your GP or a hospital doctor?
Cholesterol and triglycerides.
Yep. Okay, so cholesterol and triglycerides. Now, most people will have heard of cholesterol. A lot of people will not have heard of triglycerides, but don't worry, I do a whole session on triglycerides and a whole session on cholesterol. Okay, so fat around your abdomen increases your insulin resistance, and decreases your ability for the liver to deal with your fats, so you may result with a higher cholesterol in your blood and higher triglycerides, both of which increase your risk of heart disease and stroke. All right. And cancer. All right. How do we determine body fat? Can you tell me the simplest way of determining body fat? Where it is. Look in the mirror, okay? If you have a look, you will see. So there's two fruits that we usually refer to when we're talking about the disposition of body fat. One's the apple. So that's basically referring to weight around your abdomen, and that's the kind of android shape, truncal, and I often refer to that as truncal weight. Commonly found in males, so males will have an issue with this more than females will at a younger age, and post-menopausal females, okay? When we're younger, pre-menopause, females tend to lay fat down around their hips and their buttocks. And the whole idea of that is it's the kind of gynoid shape, and those fat stores can be mobilized when you're pregnant and then you go on to have a child. Okay, that's the whole point. Problem is when we then go into the non-childbearing years and we go through the menopause, that weight shifts from your hips to your tum. So bum to tum as you get older, okay? Does not mean you will not find females who are younger with abdominal fat, because what they will do is they will lay it down in their hips first and then it will move on to their fat. There are a couple of different shapes of people as well, where some people, it's funny when they come to clinic, I will have worked out their body mass index, which we'll come to in a little minute, and their body mass index will be high, but they'll have problems with their lipids. But then when they come in, I will see they have no hips, very slim legs, very slim arms, but their weight will be predominantly around their abdomen. That's not as common. So basically, in general, guys will have more fat around their abdomen earlier than females, but when females transition through the menopause, when they put weight on, it can go around their abdomen. It's not necessarily a cause of putting the weight on the menopause. It just means when you put weight on, which you were going to do at that stage of life, it just goes around your abdomen. Okay. And as I said, it moves from your bum to your tum. All right. So any questions about that, about visceral fat or subcutaneous fat? No? All happy enough? Right. So the next thing we're going to chat about is the best way to measure body fat. Okay. And it's a bit of a loaded question. It's very difficult. One of the most simple things you can do is just to weigh yourself. Okay, it's really simple. You have a set of scales, and the problem with it is, though, it gives you an overall body mass. It's not telling you how much fat you have, because it's weighing your bones, your blood, your organs, your fat, your muscle, etc. It's the whole kit caboodle. So it does not, if the scales go up or down, it does not reflect necessarily what's happening in your fat. Okay. However, what's good about weight? It's simple. You just need a set of scales. It's really, it's cost effective. It doesn't cost a lot, but it does take in your total weight. How do we get around that with TSD? And I've already mentioned this earlier, because we don't just measure weight.
You tape measure.
Yes, we look at other things, don't we? We look at our waist, our hips and our thighs. And there will be loads of ladies, and I've now listened to Alex most Monday nights for 4 years, and there are loads of ladies who will come on and say, oh, such and such hasn't happened, but I dropped 40 centimeters. Okay, so their body shape is very much changing. And it's because we can't measure fat specifically. Okay, so that's one. So weight's good. Weight is more useful, obviously, if you track it. It's probably not useful, I would suggest, if you track it every day, because there are fluctuations literally within 24 hours. And TSD, we kind of advocate for doing it once a week, don't we? Which is probably quite sensible. The next thing I'm going to chat about is body mass index, BMI. You may or may not heard of this. So essentially, I do use this in clinic. There are caveats with it, which we'll chat about in a wee minute. But this is essentially, and how I explain this to patients is, you can't compare me to my husband. My husband's 6 foot. I'm not 6 foot. So I can't turn around and say I'm lighter than my husband. Yeah, I may be lighter than my husband, but I'm smaller than my husband in terms of height. So the way you can kind of allow for that is to do a weight to height ratio. All right. And I use the NHS BMI calculator for this quite simply. I use it in work all the time. I think it's really good because it gives you a visual. it gives you a bar, and I shall show you this now. So if I go to share screen, and I should have the BMI calculator up here, hopefully. Right, I don't seem to have that. Give me 2 seconds. Doo -doo -doo. Right. Okay, sorry about that. Right, let's see if I can do this again. Okay. All right, can someone give me a little nod and let me know if you can see that?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Right. So if I go back, essentially, if you just Google BMI calculator, calculate your body mass index for adults. Can't use it in kiddies, shouldn't use it when you're pregnant. Ethnic background's important. We'll come back to that in a wee minute. So start. Yes, I'm over 18. So 172 centimeters, weight in kilograms. I'm going to say 82. All right. Now, this is good. It takes ethnicity into consideration, and this is really important because we now know that people have metabolic issues at different weights or different BMIs depending on their ethnicity. Okay, I'm going to put white in here for Asian, and I'll come back to this. Okay, so it gives you a color-coded chart. I kind of usually say between 19 or 20 to 25 's healthy, 25 to 30 is overweight, and it does use the term obese. I know Alex doesn't like using the term obese. I usually say clinically obese, and the reason why I think that is important, going over 30 puts you into the red zone. And that to me is important because that increases, I know you've got an increased risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. All right, so that's why it's an important term, but by no means wishing to offend anybody. Okay, so in this case, 25 to 30 is overweight. And that's about measuring your waist circumference and stuff, and we'll come back to that. So I think it's a really good tool. All right. It's nicer when I see everybody. Again, it's quick and easy. So in clinic, my nurses take the height and the weight of my patients. It was quite funny. I had a patient yesterday whose BMI had gone up because she'd lost 4 centimeters since the last time she'd been at clinic. Now, I do deal with older patients, so sometimes patients can have got smaller, but unlikely by 4 centimeters. And the nurses were querying, saying, what's going on, what's going on? And I said, it'll be human error. Whichever nurse measured the height the last time is not the same as the nurse who measured the height this time. I sent the patient back and this reading was correct. So I don't know what happened. Either that or she had heels on. She didn't look as if she was the type that would come in with heels on. However, you should obviously do it without very thick soled shoes on. It's quick and easy. Again, it's cost effective. You just need something to measure your height and something to measure your weight. What are the caveats of body mass index? Does anybody know of the caveats of body mass index? And I have quite a few people who come in and tell me it's not that good.
Ethnicity.
The ethnicity is accounted for. It wasn't before because all the original studies in body mass index were done on Caucasians, but ethnicity is accounted for now. And it's very interesting. I showed you the NHS BMI chart. So what I've shown you that to be in the overweight category, a Caucasian has to have a BMI more than 25. If you're Asian, your BMI has to be more than 23 to be in the overweight category. And I will have Asian patients who have problems with their lipids with a BMI of 24. And that won't happen with a Caucasian person. So it's really difficult. And Asian patients may have type 2 diabetes with a BMI of 24 or 25 because they're overweight for their ethnicity. Okay.
If you've got a lot of
Thinking,
muscle mass as well, like if you're a bodybuilder or something.
yeah. So I have several PTs on my books for my lipid clinic because they've got a genetic predisposition to having high cholesterol. So I see them in my lipid clinic. And their BMIs are fairly useless, okay, because they're big bunnies. They've got a lot of muscle, and their BMIs don't tell me a lot, but that's fine. I still get the tape measure out though. All right, they don't get away with it that easily, because even though they're possibly PTs or muscly guys, they can still have an increased waist circumference, okay, which can be telling in terms of their lipid profiles. So again, it doesn't differentiate between muscle and fat. But again, I think for the general population, and 99% of my populations, I think I use it all the time. All right. I do get thrown a curveball though. I'll have the height and weight before I clock the patient, before I see them in the morning. I'll have worked it out. And again, sometimes I've had body mass indexes 24, 25, or 26, and they've got dyslipidemia. And I'm thinking, ooh, and then they walk into clinic and I say, and it's their body habitus. They have weight around their abdomen, even though they have very slim legs and slim arms, etc., etc. Okay. So that can happen, but it doesn't happen more often than not. The body mass index will tell me quite a lot before I see the patient. A lot of them will be 30, 35, 40, and that will have affected their metabolic health. They'll be insulin resistant, type 2 diabetes, or have problems with their lipids, which is why I'm reviewing them. Okay, so if body mass index isn't any good for whatever reason, if you've got a lot of muscle, etc., etc., the next one in terms of cardiovascular health is your waist circumference. This is really, really good, and it's good at determining abdominal fat, because you can have a healthy BMI but still have excess abdominal fat, as I've just alluded to, which increases your risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, etc. Pros for this, you only need a measuring tape. If it's done properly, its accuracy is actually within about 5% of body fat measured using underwater weighing, believe it or not. The problem is it has to be done accurately. Now, you'll probably laugh at this, because I remember starting TSD, and hips I was fairly good at. I could get the hips the same pretty much every week. Thighs and waist, bit of a disaster, especially my thighs. I was actually thinking of getting a marker at one stage and putting a little dot in both legs, just to make sure, I may not be measuring in the right place, but at least I'd be measuring in the same place every week, which I thought would be a bit of a bonus, because I tended to be all over the show. So waist is essentially, I take it, there's lots of people laughing. So presumably every Wednesday you're just shaking your head thinking, where did I measure last week? And fine rightly, if it's gone up by 5 or down by 5, you're thinking, I didn't measure there last week. That's a huge drop or a huge increase even. So your waist, it's a bit of an odd measurement, because before I actually read up about it, I would have probably thought my waist was probably closer to my hips. I like to think of it as the Simon Cowell waist. Okay, your waist is really quite high up, and it's the midpoint between the bottom of your ribs. So if you poke your ribs, which actually, if they come down at the side, are quite far down, all right, and the top of your hip bone. So your waist is in between those two, which is not actually a very big area. And on average, on most people, it's just above your umbilicus or your belly button. Not in everybody, but mostly that's where you'll find it. So there's a bit of poking and prodding to be doing before you actually find your waist, I would suggest. And I'll come on to how you measure it in a wee minute in terms of how you should do it accurately. Now, key measurements that you need to be aware of, and I'll do it in centimeters and inches. I've written the inches down because I think I got caught out the first couple of times I did this, because lots of people do inches. I do centimeters. So less than 80 centimeters or 31.5 inches, you're low risk in terms of cardiovascular disease, okay? 80 to 88 centimeters or 31.5 to 34.6 inches is high risk, and then more than 88 centimeters or 34.6 inches is very high risk. Now that's all females, okay? And though I'm referring to Caucasians, okay? Sorry, this is for white Europeans, black Africans, Middle Eastern, and mixed origin, okay? In terms of Afro-Caribbean, South Asian, Chinese, and Japanese, less than 80 is basically low risk, 80 centimeters, and more than 80 is very high risk. And that's just all got to do with how those ethnicities carry their fat, okay? In terms of the Afro-Caribbean, South Asian, Chinese, and Japanese, they tend to carry more fat and less muscle at the same weight as a white European. It sucks, but that's just how it is, okay? So therefore, their risk of diabetes, ischemic heart disease, etc., happens at a lower waist circumference, okay? So there's really just one cut off, less than 80s, lower risk, and more than 80s, higher risk, Okay, so how to measure your waist. And you probably all Googled this when you started TSD. I definitely did. So as I said, find the bottom of your ribs at the side and the top of your hips. You place the tape measure around your middle, probably just above your belly button, and you pull it tight, not that it's digging in, but tight enough. And then you've got to breathe out naturally. All right. You can't do your beach pose, unfortunately. You have to kind of breathe out, and then you repeat that a couple of times to see what your reading is. Okay. Moving on from that, you can do a waist to hip ratio. Obviously, the higher the ratio, the more fat there's around your abdomen. And again, you only need a tape measure for this, but it means you're doing another measurement. I think waist circumference is usually quite good in its own. And remember, your hips is basically the widest point where around your buttocks. Okay. You can then, if you're fancying doing something different, you can do the string challenge. You measure your height with a piece of string, fold it in half, and check it fits around your waist. Okay. If it doesn't, it means you're at higher risk. Other things you can do to look at your body measurements are your skin fold thickness. Use calipers for that. Again, serial results are quite good for that. And it can measure the thickness of subcutaneous fat. Dietitians may use these as part of their trade. You should do it in the same place. We then move on to kind of bioimpedance or smart scales. All right. So anybody got a set of smart scales? Do you know what I mean by smart scales? I have, admittedly, only because our scales died, which we got as a wedding present, after I started TSD. And it was actually quite difficult to just get a bog standard set of scales that weren't smart scales. However, I did quite a lot of research around them. I obviously didn't want to spend a ton of money. But these are basically bioimpedance or smart scales, just like normal scales, but they usually have two foot plates on them with where you put your feet. And essentially, they send electrical impulses through the body and measure how quickly they return. And the idea being is the current flows more quickly through things with water, such as your blood, muscle, etc., but slower through fat and things like that. Okay, and then it does a calculation. So mine will tell me a percentage of fat in my body and all this kind of stuff. I gotta be honest with you, I don't really pay attention to that because I did loads of reading. I didn't want to spend a ton of money. I think I spent about 30 quid on them, you know, the amount you would spend in a normal set of scales. And I think they don't have the technology to be that accurate, to be fair. It will also rely on how hydrated you are, etc., etc. However, you could argue out with your hydration status being different of a morning. And that's another thing I forgot to mention. Presumably you'll, when you're doing your measurements on a Thursday morning, get up, pee, and then do your measurements, etc., etc. You should always do them at the same time of the day. Don't have to do it first thing, but it's probably better to do it first thing in the day, and then it's out of the way. And if you're repeating measurements, they should be done at the same time of the day. The smart scales, again, are simple and quick, but the reliability can vary. Although I would suggest if you're using the same scales, they should be consistent, but they will depend on your hydration status, okay? So if you haven't drunk as much water, if you drunk more water, that will affect the calculations, okay? We then get on to some of the research ways you can get measured, and you can use underwater weighing. Fat weighs is less dense than bone or muscle, and it measures the density. This is only used in research institutes. Okay, funnily enough. You also have a bod pod, air displacement, again, weighed before sitting in a small pod, and then you measure how much air is displaced. And again, that's a research tool. Now, the creme de la creme and the gold standard for determining how much body, if I really wanted to know for a research study how much body fat I had, I would probably ask to get a DEXA scan done. Now, some of you may have heard of DEXA scans because they're used to look at bone density. So if you've got osteoporosis or osteopenia, or if you know anybody that has, they will have a DEXA scan done. And DEXA stands for dual energy X-ray absorptometry. Probably a bit like a CT scan. You lie there still, it scans you, and it can give you your bone density, but it would also give you your fat as well. Why do we not use these? It's X-rays, okay? It exposes you to radiation. And in my health board, you're probably lucky if you can get one done in 2 years' time if you've got osteoporosis, let alone getting one done every other week to tell you what your fat tissue was doing. All right. But that's probably the best way to look at the fat throughout your body. It would probably be quite interesting. But yeah, we wouldn't advocate that. And it's expensive. It's exposing you to radiation, which you don't need to be exposed to. Okay, so those are lots of different ways. The most common ones I will use in clinic will be body mass index and waist circumference. As I said, I have a tape measure in clinic just in case body mass index isn't telling me what it should be telling me. The other thing that you can do is just to monitor your progress by what your clothes are doing. And I would imagine the majority of you, if you're at this stage, will have noticed that you're either tightening your belt or you've had to buy new trousers, etc., etc. All right. And that's a very good indication that you're losing weight and your body size is changing. Okay, has anybody got any questions about any of that? Nope. I can't remember, does the TSD, it does your weight and your measurements. I don't think it does BMI specifically, does it?
Yeah,
No,
on
does
the
anybody?
new app, if you put in, every week all your measurements,
Yeah,
there's if you click in the right spot, there's a sort of chart of it's just an outline of a body.
right.
But then at the bottom, there's a little scale, like a colored scale like yours, that plots you and tells you what it is.
Oh, does it? Right, okay, so you
Yeah.
do get your
And it's
BMI.
pretty
Right.
close to the NHS one. I've tried both, and they're pretty close.
Right. Okay. Good. It's amazing how height affects it though, because my little lady who had dropped 4 centimeters yesterday, her BMI had obviously gone up, and I was thinking that's a bit harsh because I had to go back to the previous clinic letter, and her weight hadn't really changed, but we'd made her 4 centimeters smaller, so which is a bit of a shocker. Um, but yeah, so it is quite, and again, tracking's useful. And like everything, a one-off. And I also get patients who say, oh, but I didn't weigh that at home, and you won't because you're not using the same set of scales. But the idea is if you're doing it regularly at home or regularly in clinic, the scales shouldn't, won't change.
I'm imagining it's different during the summer and the winter just by what they're wearing to clinic as well.
Yeah, it is. But to be fair, I always kind of round down or take a couple of kilos off for that. And, if somebody's quite pedantic about it, which I would be, because I mean, if I went to clinic, I was thinking I do this at home with nothing on. So not doing that when I go to a medical clinic. But yeah, no, I'll give a couple of kilograms and some of the guys wear massive boots and the nurses just are not going to ask them to take them off. I might take them off to ask them to look at the back of their ankles to see if they've got cholesterol deposits right enough, but I have to do that. But yeah, they'll not get asked to take off their boots or whatever. Okay, so most of you should be quite a few weeks in now. How many weeks have you kind of roughly done of TSD? Shout out someone who hasn't spoken yet, someone who's being very quiet.
10 weeks.
10. Right, good.
I'm 12.
12, right, okay, good. So 3 months, good.
52 weeks.
Sorry, what was that?
52 weeks.
52 weeks, right, wow, okay. So, what I like to do at this stage, after we've chatted about how we measure weight loss and stuff, is to work out your percentage of weight loss, okay? So if you have a piece of paper handy, I'm going to work through a couple of examples of this. And I really love it when you can put this in the inner circle, okay? Because I think this is really good. Now, this will be more or less for some people. It's just one way of looking at things. Please remember that you track lots of things. You track your centimeters. And we've said that before, lots of people haven't lost weight, but they're 40 centimeters down here and this, that, and the other, and they're lifting this and carrying their shopping and walking 5 miles, which they didn't do before. So there are lots of different ways to improve your health. And it's funny because I'm now 4 years down the line and TSD for me was about weight to begin with. But what I do now is not about weight. And if you told me that 4 years ago, I would have said, yeah, no, it's about the weight. Okay. So you'll change, you'll evolve. As far as I'm concerned now, it's literally about health and just being happy and having a good life. I use a gratitude journal. I saw somebody posted yesterday in the inner circle, "Oh, wouldn't go anywhere near in the gratitude journal, thought it was a load of nonsense." Yeah, I was there. I wasn't interested in gratitude journals or anything like that 4 years ago. Okay. I journal. Okay. I've listened to all the TSD books as required. I did those in Audible. I listen to loads of podcasts now, self-development and lots of metabolic and health things. So you'll evolve. And it's pretty much as Alex says, you will change as a person. It will become part of you, which is a good thing. All right, so we're going to work out our percentage weight loss now. Let's see how we're going to do this. So let's say you have someone who starts off at 74 kilograms, okay? And they're now 60 kilograms. So if you take 60 away from 74, they have decreased their weight by 14 kilograms. So what percentage is that? So I just write 74 minus 60 equals 14. If you then put the weight lost, which is 14, divided by the initial weight, which is 74, times by 100, that's an 18.9% loss in weight. Okay, so that's your example. So again, if you started at 100 kilograms and you're now down at 90 kilograms, you've lost 10 kilograms. So if you do the weight lost, which is 10 kilograms, divided by your starting weight, which was 100 kilograms, times 100 is a 10% weight loss. Okay, so the idea is now you go away, or you can do it either now, or you can go away and do it, put in your starting weight, what weight you are now, and work out your percentage weight loss. Okay, and if anybody wants to share it, please do. If not, I would love for it to be put on the inner circle. It's really encouraging. Okay, and it's helps lots of other people who are just starting out. Okay.
7%.
I'm 7.5%.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Right. Okay, so 2 to 5% loss, you will have improvement in your blood glucose levels, improvement in your triglycerides, and it only takes a small amount of fat loss or weight loss to prevent progression to type 2 diabetes. 5 to 10% weight loss, you'll have improvement in your blood pressure and your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. Okay, so loads of wins. All right. The other thing you can do, as well as in the inner circle, as well as putting on your percentage weight loss, you can put on any of your wins. So you might have been a type 2 diabetic and you're down into pre-diabetes, or you might be a pre-diabetic and you're now normal glycemic, you've got normal glucose. Okay, your blood pressure may have come down. You may be on less blood pressure medications than you were when you started TSD. Those are all really good wins as well. You may be able to walk further. Okay, walking, moving helps your liver irrespective of whether you lose weight or not. Okay, 10 to 15% weight loss, you will get a clinical improvement in obstructive sleep apnea. 7.5%, excellent. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, so your fatty liver will improve with 10 to 15% weight loss, and mobility, depression, etc., with 10 to 15%. All right. Anybody get any questions about that? No. Anybody get any questions about measuring weight or anything like that at all, or anything about insulin resistance, truncal weight, visceral fat?
Can I just ask, how do you, like, if you're measuring your thighs, how do you measure your thighs accurately? Because I keep getting different
Yeah, the thighs were
measurements.
probably my worst one. Yeah, as I said, I kind of thought I was going to use a marker and do a little dot and just kind of leave it there. It is difficult. I guess the best place to probably look is to go online and see where, and again, it's more being consistent. So I guess what you could do is when I'm in the gym and I'm doing something at a particular height or a level, I kind of go up and mark it against my legs. So you could probably do that if you've got a radiator or something in the house. Now, I'm not advocating getting black markers and writing all over everything, but if you make a wee nick in something when you stand beside it, so that's where you put the tape every week, that's probably a good idea. Or yeah, get a permanent marker and just put a wee dot. My thighs were horrendous, yeah. I haven't measured my thighs in ages, actually. I still do my waist, but I haven't done my thighs in a while.
Okay, thanks. We'll try that.
Essentially because I can still see the change in my thighs, but yeah, have a go with that.
I have a really convenient freckle.
Yep, see, that's what you need, a convenient freckle. I didn't have it. I think my freckle was too far up. So, which was a bit of a shame, but yeah, it's quite good if you've got a freckle. It's quite useful. Right. Next week, we're going to be chatting, or I'm going to be chatting about osteoporosis. Okay, prevention is better than cure. All right, which is quite important for perimenopausal or postmenopausal ladies. Okay, so that's kind of getting away with, or getting away from, should I say, weight, etc., etc. But we'll do osteoporosis next week. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed this morning's session. So yeah, so I'll be covering Wednesdays. I'll be back next Wednesday, and over the next few weeks we'll cover osteoporosis, and then a bit about metabolism, what it is, and then metabolic changes of menopause and fatty liver, etc. Okay, so presumably you're still getting the sessions on the app, or however they do it now. Okay, good. Right. Well, lovely to meet everybody. Remember, if you've got any questions, and even if you've got any questions from this week that you think of and you want to ask next week, we can do that at the beginning if you wish. All right, not a problem at all. But have a fab week. And well, one tip: keep moving. Activity in terms of insulin resistance, okay, is really, really important. Okay, so just keep moving, and not formal exercise. I literally just mean moving. I try to move within 30 minutes of eating now, whether I'm at work or whether I'm at home. I try and get up and do something. Because the house is getting painted this week, I've been doing nothing but move furniture and pictures. Cracking amount of steps, and I didn't even leave the house. Right, have a fantastic week. And lovely to meet you all. And take care. Okay.
Thanks, Caroline.
Take care.
Thanks, Caroline.
Bye.
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 Bye.